So just to reiterate what was posted on the MnDOT Learning Center and what you can expect from today. So we want to share information about the updated and new responsibilities and requirements that are part of the MnDOT Complete Streets policy. We want to provide an understanding of how Complete Streets fit into our existing project and also how it connects with other priorities, especially with FHWA. We will showcase a number of new Complete Street resources that are really geared towards supporting implementation ongoing of the policy and tailored especially for district staff. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time practicing applying what you've learned in an interactive activity and focusing on the transportation hierarchy tool, which is something that's new with this update. So before we get too deep into things, I just want to introduce the folks that you'll interact with the most during this afternoon. So I'm really just grateful for this wonderful team that's come together to help pull together this training and facilitating the session this afternoon. So myself, I'm Nissa Tupper, Transportation and Public Health Planning Director. I'm with the Office of Sustainability and Public Health here at MnDOT and will be your resource for ongoing questions and technical assistance on implementing the Complete Streets policy. And I will hand it over to Sonia Piper.
Yep. So thanks, Nissa. I'm Sonia Piper. I'm the Active Transportation Safety Engineer in our Office of Traffic Engineering, and I'm super excited to be supporting Complete Streets and everything that we do. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Edgerton. I'm a Vice President at Zan Associates and a Transportation Planner, and have been helping the MnDOT side with this Complete Streets update and with the handbook, which we're going to talk about today.
Hi, I'm Linda Spohr. I'm a Senior Engagement Manager with Zan Associates, and we'll be helping to facilitate the small group session today. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bridget B. Orkland. I'm the Director of Education and Equity at Zan Associates, and I will also be helping with small groups.
And my name is Tom Holmes. I'm a Senior Planner at Zan Associates, and I will also be helping with small groups today.
Okay, great. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items that we wanted to go over. I think at this point, many of us are pretty familiar with the virtual meeting format, but a couple of things just to note. We do have closed captioning functionality. There are instructions to that will be pasted into the chat room very soon. In addition to that, we're going to facilitate this meeting by asking you all to stay on mute unless you're talking. You can mute yourself by looking at the top of your screen on the toolbar. There's a little microphone icon, and you click that to mute. When you do have a question, we ask that you raise your hand. And to do that, again, at the top of the toolbar, there's a reactions icon. It's a little smiley face with a hand. And if you click that, you'll see a raised hand. You can use that to raise your hand or to lower your hand if you have a question. We'll also monitor the chat. So if you've got questions as we're going through a presentation that you want to just jot down, we'll do our best to get to those when we pause for questions. And there will be a few breaks for Q&A. There will be at least a couple of short kind of get up and stretch your legs types of breaks. In addition to all of that, we are going to ask at the end of the session that you do post evaluation. It'll be another Mentimeter similar to what you did in the beginning that we can use to collect feedback. So the last thing I wanted to point out, and then I'll turn it back over to Nissa here, is in the link, you'll see a link on the screen to a Padlet. This will also be pasted into the chat shortly. But what we've set up for you today is sort of a visual, virtual version of our agenda. Hopefully everyone can see I'm sharing my screen now, but this is called Padlet. Padlet is a tool that lets us link things like the PowerPoint slides that we're going to go over, as well as additional resources. So this is like the interactive version of our agenda. One thing to note is you'll see the columns correspond to the sections on the agenda. When you hover over a column, sometimes there's more stuff than you can see on the screen with things that are linked or attached. And so just note that you've got to use that sidebar to scroll around. We're not going to do a whole lot with the agenda right away, but later on, we're going to get into a case study where we do some practice, and it's going to become pretty important. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Nissa to kick us off.
All right, so yeah, we'll post that link to the Padlet in the chat, and that was also sent out in an email for folks. So just a little bit of background about what complete streets are, some level setting for our discussion today. So long story short, there isn't a singular design solution for complete streets, which can make it challenging, but also makes it really exciting. It's really about an approach that's rooted in addressing safety and access needs for all users of our system. So what this means is applying a multimodal approach. Jay mentioned, we're no longer the Department of Highways, we're the Department of Transportation. That means multimodal. So we need to be considering the needs not only of people driving, but also people who are walking, biking, taking transit, and the folks who are driving those commercial vehicles and emergency vehicles. This applies to both our roadways along and across. So there's not a one size fits all. It's a flexible approach, and it's appropriate for really any transportation project. And that's important because it recognizes that the needs do and should vary, along with the strategies across urban, suburban, and rural settings. So, we tend to think about elements, might mean adding some sidewalks or medians to help people who are walking cross safely, converting vehicle lanes. The application really depends on the context and the needs of the community, and we will dive into all of that today. But remember that common thread is really promoting a safe system for everyone. And at MnDOT, a complete streets approach is required on all eligible MnDOT state highway projects. We'll dive into a little bit later what those non-eligible projects are, or those exemptions. But basically, projects that don't change the structure or the layout of the road are exempt from complete streets. So sometimes things like routine or preventative maintenance, again, we'll get more into that later on. But essentially, all of our projects, and bottom line, it's about creating a safe system. So Jay also mentioned a little bit of the history of complete streets. So 2013 was the year that we established our first complete streets policy. We were one of the first state DOTs to develop a statewide policy, and many of the states have looked to us as we make updates for theirs, which is really puts us in a great leadership position. This came about to comply with a statute that's linked here on the side, and important text from that statute is listed on the left, really reiterating a lot of what I've talked about. It's about safety and accessibility for all people. It's about those movements along and across our roadways, and it's really important that it's sensitive to local context. And this applies, like Jay mentioned, to all phases of our project process, from planning to maintenance. In 2016, we revised the policy. This involved consolidating some of our relevant guidance, establishing reporting process and requirements, which many of you are probably familiar with, and also clarifying policy exemptions. So we've made some changes to those, and we will get to that in a minute. So as Jay mentioned, we do have a continued commitment to complete streets. It not only ensures compliance to the statute, but it also really helps operationalize our mission, our vision, and our values in a real way. Our vision states that we want to maximize the health of our people, the environment, and our economy, and complete streets are a way to knit all of those things together. So when the Office of Sustainability and Public Health was created in 2019, we asked stakeholders internally and externally what we could be doing to really advance public health from the transportation lens. And the Complete Streets policy came up as an important lever for us to advance public health. So the update that we're rolling out right now really provides a clear implementation framework for staff and better articulates for our partners in the public what they can expect from us. So that includes a host of new resources that we'll be walking through, and then also some performance measures so that we can do a better job tracking how we're doing and better circling back to fill in any gaps or areas where we need to provide better assistance and better guidance. So for folks who aren't familiar, the update for this policy has been pretty in-depth. So in 2020, we undertook an evaluation, and this was both quantitative, so we looked at the Complete Streets project reporting forms that currently exist, and we also had discussions in each district and with central office staff. And we had a centralized Complete Streets policy work group that was help guiding this evaluation, and that included a really diverse set of staff from across the districts, in maintenance, different modal offices like the Office of Transit and Active Transportation, the Office of Freight and Commercial Vehicles, State Aid, Bridge, and also the offices that previously co-owned the policy. So we ran through the findings with them that are on the right side there and came up with recommendations for how we could address the needs that came up, and went through what was needed in terms of updates to the policy as well as some other items. So in general, just to get everybody on the same page about what we found, overall, we found great support for Complete Streets. We did identify with staff that there seemed to be some gaps between the agency priorities and the policy, so especially around addressing needs of non-motorized users, often being described as a nice to have. So staff requested more education materials and also some more timely and consistent feedback about how we're doing as an agency, how districts are doing with implementing Complete Streets, so that we can better understand what those challenges are and address those challenges as well as the needs of all of our users. We also checked in about the current Complete Streets project report form and the process. So previously it was hosted on SharePoint. That platform is no longer supported by MnDOT. It was meant to be kind of a holdover platform, so we had a good opportunity to make some good updates to that. Aside from the technical components, we also found that awareness of the reporting requirements was generally low, as well as inconsistent approval by the project sponsors and district leadership. So that's another piece that we're focused on. In terms of resources, we had a lot of great resources, but we discovered that we had too many and they were in too many different places. So people were confused about which resources they should be using in particular for their role and at different phases of the project process. And then also the request for more localized and tailored resources. So we took that into account with the updates that you'll see in a little bit here. And overarching to all of this is district staff really expressed an interest in more clear guidance to help balance and identify the priority of user needs. So that is where the new baseline transportation hierarchy work comes from. So with the policy work group and looking at those findings, we came up with this set of activities. We presented these to the senior leadership team and received approval to move forward with all of them. Some of them we'll touch on today, some of them are more ongoing, but really these are all knitted together to make sure that we're applying the policy in a transparent way that provides accountability and also, most importantly, to help us facilitate process improvements. So many of these that you're seeing here will be led by my office, the Sustainability of Public Health. But we also, I just want to note that all of these involve a lot of collaboration across the agency. So the first subset, education, tools, and training, these are intended to really increase knowledge and foster greater championship, share those peer-to-peer learnings. So today you'll see the updated tools and guidance, and we'll also share some case studies, which we didn't have before. It's pretty exciting. The second subset, workflow, reporting, and feedback. These are targeted really to increase clarity, efficiency, and ownership of the policy. So I mentioned an update to the reporting form and that reporting process, which we'll get into. We have had one set of district workshops, and I anticipate many more of these to come. I've mentioned, performance targets. We'll get into those at the end of this training, and this training here is part of relaunching Complete Streets, as well as with some of our external communication tools. That last subset, policy, legislative action, and funding. These are really those bigger bites to chew, if you will, that are intended to help reduce either those institutional or system barriers for implementation. So many of these tie to funding. The big piece that we'll talk about today is the update to the policy to create a baseline modal hierarchy. And, there's ongoing things that we're continuing to work on related to things like maintenance. So there'll be more to come on this. This is definitely an ongoing process. So with the policy itself, a copy of that is available in the Padlet that was shared. This is also on the website. I won't walk through the policy line by line today, but I do encourage you all to take a look through that updated policy and especially look at the responsibilities under your role to make sure that you understand what those responsibilities are. In the time that we have today, I just want to update some of the key highlights. So in terms of process, I've mentioned that the Office of Sustainability and Public Health is taking over point on Complete Streets. So we are now the policy owner. It was previously co-owned by the Office of Transportation System Management and the Office of Project Management and Technical Support. I'll note they're very much still involved and will continue to provide support. The shift to our office was agreed upon by all of the offices to really just help streamline the efforts and provide more capacity and technical assistance. That second bullet on the left updated the reporting cadence. So previously, we had reporting at the charter scoping and 30% final design phase. We shifted to have it start earlier at the planning phase. We're maintaining scoping and 30% final design, but that shift to planning really helps encourage consistent and earlier consideration of complete streets into that project process. Scoping and 30% final design allow for further iteration as things can change up until that 30% final design stage. We also have that consolidated resource for implementation, which is our new Complete Streets Handbook. The new policy format has all resources external to the policy document itself. So you'll find that all in the handbook, which we will walk through in more detail today. And that handbook also includes information on those new performance measures, which is another key process change. In terms of staff responsibilities, we've articulated responsibilities that are new for public engagement communication staff. I should note that that's just formal documentation really of the current responsibilities for those staff. This role in the districts wasn't present at the time of the last policy update, so this was a good time for us to acknowledge that good work that's already happening. And then we also added landscape architects. They've been involved with Complete Streets, will continue to be. So that's articulated as a separate category in the policy. And then we also added some connections for traffic engineers and designers. The last bullet on there, we've revised responsibilities for a handful of project staff that are most intimately involved with the Complete Streets process, notably shifting the reporting responsibility at planning to go directly to planning staff. And we know that that's a shift for districts. And so while that's designated under the policy for planners, who fills that out really is at the discretion of district leadership, but it should be filled out at that planning phase. And then throughout all of these project roles, we've added responsibilities for early collaboration on maintenance, which is really important, and also connections to that handbook for implementation.